Hello and welcome back to Market Psychology 101, where we look for value in the markets when there's fear and are cautious when there's greed. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin rainbow chart and seeing if we have any idea of where the price action may be taking us in the short and medium term, especially with the fourth halving coming up really soon. So starting off with fear and greed, we're still in greed, still around the same areas that we were not too long ago. You can see last week we were in extreme greed, 76 and higher. However, we are now just in high greed, which is still pretty good. And if we take a look at the last year, what do we notice? We were in the sideways to uptrend from neutral, or you could say fear right here. We did get down to 30. And we've been going up. Now you can see since March 5th, we've been in this minor downtrend. Now, if I could draw a trend line on here, as you've seen on the charts, you may be wondering, is this going to be a higher low, or hoping for that? Now, fear and greed does not have to work out the same way, but I am looking for greed to have somewhat of a bounce back up in order for prices to go higher, if they are to go higher in the short term. When we zoom way out, you can see that we are still in this big macro uptrend of fear to greed, and maybe there is one more big spike coming. Now, as you can see recently, in early March when we were this high, you can see right there about 90, we were only at these levels twice on this chart. Here in December of 2020, when Bitcoin was making new all-time highs from the 2017 peak, and here in June of 2019 when there is a mid-cycle top. So I've been wondering which one of these would we be having. Over here, the mid-cycle top spiked and then went down pretty quickly. Now this happened within a matter of like 6 months from the Bitcoin low to the high. The true low was in around November, and we've been going up for over a year and made new all-time highs. So there's a lot to show us that, comparing just where we were on the greed chart, that maybe we were going to have something similar to in what we did in 2020, early 21, that we might be getting an earlier top than expected. Let me show you what that looks like here. So that mid-cycle top, June of 2019, that was right here. And from this low, it only took about 6 months, okay? December of 2020, when we were making new highs past this 2017 peak, that's where we were back here. And we didn't top until, the first top was in April of 21. The true top of the last cycle, we had this double top, but the true Bitcoin top was in November of 2021. And it got a little bit above 69,000. Now recently, for the first time ever, Bitcoin did make a new all-time high before the halving. However, might this be a mid-cycle top? And we go down for a bit before going to even greater all-time highs sometime around the middle of 2025, give or take a few months. So if we were to get a top that is way earlier than people expect, I've wondered if we would get it in or around June, because the Federal Reserve, Chairman Jerome Powell has said that this was just a few months ago. They anticipated doing around 3 rate cuts this year. Now that message seems to be changing because the inflation rates have been going back up. We've had sticky inflation. By the way, this is the Bitcoin chart on the daily. We'll get back to that. But if we go to inflation, take a look at the rates, and take it off log, you can see here we're between the 100 and the 200-month moving average, and just bouncing around in there between 3 and 3.75% for inflation. So as long as inflation is staying relatively high and isn't showing signs of going down, the Fed probably isn't going to be cutting rates too soon. At least that's the message that they've been giving us. And if they do cut rates and inflation spikes higher, then of course that's not looking great for rate cuts anywhere in the near term. So I do have an indicator. It's these green and red dots, an indicator for buy and sell signals. And this right here kind of looks like accumulation, like it's charging up, wanting to go higher. I would take that look if I were on a chart. We're all the way down here. We have the strong 200-month moving average. Does not look like it wants to go down easy, especially going sideways and having these buy signals. So there's still a lot of work to do for inflation to go down. So if, this is my thought, if inflation is to stay high and sticky and the Fed isn't going to cut rates soon, then we probably won't see the true top of Bitcoin, at least for this cycle, for a little while longer. Now, going back to this chart, maybe this top was a mid-cycle top, at least for a little bit. And by the time they truly start cutting rates and keeping rates on a decline, maybe it's not going to happen till later this year. And if that's the case, then I would say, it would be my guess at least, that the peak of this Bitcoin cycle, like we've had before, once or even twice, I mean, you could take a look at these. Between the halvings, we had a double peak here where things went really high. We had a double peak here. I'm taking a look at any time the price in the rainbow chart got into the orange to the red. We had a singular peak in that 2017 cycle, or the cycle between 2016 and 2020. We had a double peak in 21. And so I'm wondering, are we going to get a double peak this time around? Who knows? We'll see. But something else to know is that we are right in the middle here. We're right around this yellow zone. And I've talked about this in my other videos. Each halving, at least on this rainbow chart, it goes up a zone. The first halving was in this fire sale zone. Second halving, buy zone. Third halving, accumulate zone. Fourth halving, and it's going to be around, people are saying the 19th, 20th, something like that. Let's take a look here at the 21st. If we were in that green zone, the still cheap zone, we would be between 52.5 and under 69,000, roughly. Right now, we are in the still cheap zone. I've been talking about this for a while, and it didn't seem like Bitcoin was going to be coming back down to this zone, especially as we got above 70,000. But the stock market and Bitcoin has started to come down a bit. And so if we go back to Bitcoin, and we don't need to take a look at it on the monthly, let's start zooming in here. This is the weekly, and let's take a look at log because it makes things look better. And let's make sure that because we're looking between the prior high and low, that our fibs are on log as well. When we look for price targets above, we'll take it off log. So you can see right here on the weekly, we have this sell signal. Now, on the way up, when we have these sell signals, sometimes they're only for a couple weeks until we get a turnaround. As you can see right there as well. Here it went down roughly for 2 months, as well as here. So it can be 2 weeks to 2 months. Let's go to the cycle before as we were on our way up. This was the COVID dump right here. When we had a weekly sell signal, you can see here is about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. We had that mini one. So anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months seemed to be the average of how long it takes for these sell signals to play out. So right now on the weekly, Bitcoin is on this 10-week moving average. That's that blue line right here. But we did just get a sell signal. When we zoom in to the daily, something I want you guys to notice here. Well, first of all, if we zoom way in, maybe to the last like 3 months, 1 month, looks like decent accumulation, however it's going down. Now this low that I made right here matched up over here, but we are still creating lower highs, and we don't want to get under this level of 60,800 too much. The other thing to consider is we have this wick back here at around 59,400 that may be key. And the reason why is not just because this wick back here and where the price is holding, but that's really close to the 100-day moving average. As of right now, the Heikin-Ashi candles on the daily, we have broken under, as of right now, under the 50-day moving average. That is not great. And should we keep going down, then we just take a look at the next level, which would be at around 59,000, and we have this line back here. Okay? Now, are there any other areas that we might take a look at and see, maybe it's going to hit there? Going back to the weekly, we have our 20 moving average here. And these are pretty close. I know one's 20 and one's around 20. You can see they're around the same area. 53,000, just a little bit under 55,000. And we've talked before about how the 58, 59,000 level is around the 100. So if it breaks under that 100, maybe the candle body gets to the 100-day moving average and it wicks underneath to the 20-week moving average. Okay, I hope you guys see how I got there. So here, the candle body got to the 50-day moving average, this orange line, but it wicked way lower. Okay, that can happen. A wick isn't where it closes, per se. It's just how far the price reaches down. So that would be my guess, that if we keep going lower, and it looks like we are, that watch for 55 to 59,000, somewhere in there. Now, what does that mean for altcoins? One of the ways, there's a couple of ways we can take a look at the altcoin market. We have the alt season index, and we have Bitcoin dominance, which is really important. Let's start off with Bitcoin dominance. As we zoom out, you can see here that when Bitcoin dominance has this big sell-off, these red lines right here, January 8th was when alt season was done from that 2017 bull run. Right in here. So Bitcoin ran up till about middle of December. Okay, but the altcoins weren't done. What happened at that time is that when 61%, you see it right there, and right now we have 56%, when 61% about of all the money that was in crypto was in Bitcoin, it had this capitulation event. And inside of 6 weeks, until January 8th, that's when the big sell-off started, inside of a few weeks, like 3-4 weeks, that money that was in Bitcoin went way down. You can see right here, around 40%. That money flipped into the altcoins, and altcoins went berserk. If you were lucky enough to hold any altcoins that benefited from this, some did a 20x, a 50x, or even more. It's crazy times. And if you didn't take profits, and there were some altcoins I didn't, I was in here back then, I saw 50x profits turn into 10x profits inside of a couple weeks. It was crazy. Did not feel good. Likewise in 21. Remember how I told you guys that in April of 21, that was the first top for Bitcoin. And in around the middle of May is when Bitcoin started to sell off towards the 30,000 levels from the 65,000 levels. Let me show you that on this chart. So mid-April, got up to around 65,000, went down to the 30,000. But you can see the selling started here. See at the bottom, early mid-May, going back to Bitcoin dominance. You can see early mid-May was when Bitcoin dominance finished tanking, again, to the low 40 percentiles. And if you were lucky, and I was again, I had some altcoins do very well in this time, and I knew better to take profits that time around. So a lot of people have been watching for Bitcoin dominance to come up and then eventually have a big sell-off. Now there's a couple of things you can see here. We have this spike up here, and if you can connect the trend line, we get this line here. Now, does it have to touch it? No. It could, of course, go higher, and maybe we have this sideways channel, okay? You can also see we have this line here. I connected it from this support that we went down to, and I know it's not perfect. It hit some areas back here. So maybe Bitcoin dominance is going to hit this 57 level. That's what I'm looking for, me personally. The chart could invalidate it completely, but I'm curious. This 57 to 58% level, what's going to happen by there? Now, it doesn't have to go straight up. This could come down a little bit and then go up and then down. But when Bitcoin dominance does tank, we now know that's when the alt season goes parabolic in a really short period of time. And maybe it's going to be, you can see right here at the bottom, maybe the first rate cuts aren't until early 2025. Maybe they're not until late 2024. And our quarter four for the economy is usually very strong, but if it isn't, maybe then they do rate cuts later this year instead of later this summer, as they've been hinting at. The other reason why the rate cuts are important, before I go to the alt season charts, I want to show you this really quick. So these red lines, this is the dot-com bubble. This is the great financial crisis. These red lines, this is lined up with the first Fed rate cut after they held rates higher for longer. And if you notice, and by the way, these red lines, it is within a month of when the yield curve uninverts, just so you know. Take a look here. This is, let's zoom in, make sure we get this accurate. November of 2000, July of 07. If we go to the yield curve inversion, okay, November 2000, let's zoom way in here. When we uninvert, December, January of that time. So just a month after, okay, the yield curve uninverts. Great financial crisis, June of 07, a month before, okay, so it's really close. When the yield curve uninverts and the rates are cut, that was pretty darn near the top of both these bull markets, and about a year and a half later, we bottomed. So that is another reason to think that the markets are going to spike and run up into rate cuts and then tank after. Now, does that have to happen? No. And I'll go to the 70s to show you why. When inflation was peaking, this would be ideally what the Fed tries to do in this area. Excuse me. This area, the S&P 500, right here, when inflation was peaked, that was near the market bottom. When the inflation was peaked, the white line, that was near the market bottom. When they cut rates, not too far from the market bottom. And so maybe in an inflationary market, they might be able to get the economy to struggle so much that the true rate cut doesn't happen until after the market starts selling off. So knowing this happened in the 70s twice with those two peaks of inflation, that can happen. Just something to keep an eye on. So we have the inflation, the 70s, the 70s style theory, if you will, that rate cuts aren't going to happen until after the market's going down, or we have rate cuts near the peaks. Take your bets. I don't want to get in the business of predicting too much because the markets always do something different. Now, recently, you can see this white line, that was the last peak of inflation, happened pretty close to the market bottom. Not exactly, but pretty close. And you can see here, the S&P was hitting that 200 moving average. When the S&P is around the 200 moving average, tends to be a good time to buy in multiple areas, even crypto. So something to consider. Going back to the Bitcoin rainbow chart, let's take a look at multiple theories. Maybe rate cuts don't happen until, now they're saying later. Let's go with an early guess here. Let's go with maybe early to mid-September. Okay? I think that's fair to say. And you can see here that when Bitcoin has run up in the rainbow chart, it's gotten to these red bands, but most recently the second red and the orange band. Let's meet in the middle on this. Let's say the orange band is where we go, because we do have diminishing returns. That orange band, that third color down, you can see we could, if we spike by then, get somewhere between 130 and 170,000 for Bitcoin. To me, that seems fair and realistic. And a big reason why that a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok and all the other social media platforms, they don't talk about this enough or ever even consider it, is market cap. When we go to Bitcoin, what is the market cap? 1.3 trillion, 1.25 fully diluted, 1.34. The largest stock in the world, Microsoft, has a market cap of 3 trillion. So in my opinion, that would be the best case scenario, is to have a market cap somewhat equal to or close to the very best stock in the world. So let's just take 3.1 trillion, if you will, and you can double check my math. I'm doing this on my calculator. Let's take 3.1 and divide it. We'll divide it by the smaller number to give us a bigger percentage. So 3.1 divided by 1.25, that is a 2.48. So I'll even give you a higher number, 2.5. What would be a 2.5x to take us from a Bitcoin market cap of 1.25 trillion to 3.1 trillion? Well, if I took 2.5 times our current number, which is 63, I'll just do 63,700. The number I'm getting is 159K for Bitcoin. You can double check my math if you want. Let's just say 160K. Okay, I did this on my calculator. Again, going back to November, middle of November, you take a look at that orange box, 160K is right near the high end of that orange box. I could see that being possible. I really could. If rate cuts are not going to happen until later this year, and we do peak like we did in the dot-com bubble and the great financial crisis, that we peak into rate cuts, okay? But maybe the economy struggles. Maybe things go down and inflation spikes into later this year, early next year. Maybe inflation spikes, and like we saw in the S&P 500 before, that as inflation spikes, that is really close to a market bottom. And the true top for Bitcoin doesn't come until after they start cutting rates. That the bottom, let me slow down a little. I'm getting hyper, I'm getting excited. Let's say inflation, they don't do rate cuts and inflation starts to spike. They're keeping rates higher for longer, and the spike of inflation is again near a market bottom, like it was in the 70s and early 80s, okay? And then they do rate cuts after, which is ideally, just talking about this out loud, ideally they would do rate cuts at the bottom of the market if they're timing things well, before they did rate cuts and a signal at the end. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they cut rates and then boom, away we go. You can see here, when they cut rates, last time the market went up and we had the COVID crash. But after the stimulus money, more quantitative easing, rates were low, and then they injected $6 trillion or whatever, printed that out of thin air. And that's why we have inflation now. And things just went parabolic. And from the bottom to the top, we had a 120% bull run, like inside of a year. So what if something like that were to happen? That by later this year, inflation spikes and then we run up. Okay, let's go to the Bitcoin rainbow chart. And that we do get a 4-year cycle. Now, if you're hearing about a 4-year cycle for the first time, here's the reason why people talk about it. When Bitcoin peaked in 2013, take a look at the date, December of 2013. What's 4 years after December of 2013? Well, December 2017 is when it peaked. What's 4 years after that? Or 3 years, 11 months. We had the true peak in November. Now, I will argue that a lot of the altcoins and the social risk was they were running higher into this first peak. So some people are looking at a peak for Bitcoin and altcoins moving more from this first peak than the second peak, thinking that, maybe the first peak, or that the true peak for Bitcoin is going to be, somewhere more in line with early 2025, late 2024. And they're going more from here. Okay. 4-year cycle still kind of intact. Others are saying, no, middle to late 25. Right? Now, the middle to late 25 theory, in my opinion, would have to have inflation spike, tank the markets like it did in the 70s, and then have a big rebound after some quantitative easing and rate cuts. Okay? If we took a 4-year cycle from late 2025, and again, this is 4 years from that second Bitcoin peak in November of 21, where does the orange box put us? This is even more exciting if the 4-year cycle plays out. Take your pick. In my opinion, it's going to be one of these two scenarios. Now watch neither one play out and something in the middle happens, or neither happens, and we get no bull run until 2028, because why not? But we're playing with some ideas here. You can see here the price would be between 189 and 243K. To me, this is more exciting, because if Bitcoin's going to have that much more money into it, imagine how much money is going to be made in the altcoins. If you accumulate altcoins and buy into altcoins when Bitcoin is down, should you dollar cost average and invest into the right altcoins? They all don't run to new highs. Some don't run at all from the last cycle. Some new coins just completely fall off the table. So do your research. Okay? I have my ideas of which altcoins will do well, and I might be wrong. I'm not an expert. The only area I'm an expert in is within the field of psychology. That's why I made this channel, Market Psychology, because I notice for a long time people get way more excited when the market's up than they do when it's down. And I'm sure you're telling yourself, well, duh, of course I'm more excited. For me, I try to be the opposite. I try to get more excited when prices are lower so I can accumulate more. And when prices go up in something like crypto, I'm kind of sad because, well, I have to take profits, which, are usually great, but then I have to wait a while and the excitement's over. Okay. So once the excitement's done, I'm like, well, dang it. That was kind of fun waiting to see how it go up. And you always wish it could go higher, of course, but I try to switch my mind around and be way more excited when the price of Bitcoin is hitting these longer term moving averages. I try to buy altcoins when we're underneath the 100 and 200 MA, or underneath some of these fib levels from the prior high to low. So again, should Bitcoin have a little bit of a sell-off here, maybe go, somewhere between 58 to 55,000. We talked about that as being the next area on the daily moving average. Should it get down here, 58 to 56, maybe somewhere in here. That's my guess. Who knows? Right now we have some wicks on the red candles showing some level of support. So maybe it never gets below 62. Okay. But should it get down here, and should Bitcoin dominance continue to go higher, then altcoins and the money in them is going to roll over more into Bitcoin. I wanted to show you the alt season chart. Sorry I didn't get to this earlier. We'll finish with this. This is alt season on the macro chart right here. It was very high in early 2018, like I told you. It had these three spikes. You can take a look here. September 2020, May of 21, and later 21, early 22. I'll tell you guys right now, just from what I saw and experienced, last time it was that peak into early May where I saw most altcoins ones available on Coinbase especially, ripping up. After that, I didn't notice as many. Maybe they were altcoins more available on Binance and other chains, sure. But from what I saw and experienced, this was the true all season here. What have we had going on here? Well, we've been in this downtrend that we broke, started going up, and we are just getting near the bottom of a down wave. And maybe, should this uptrend continue, maybe the all season index on the yearly gets somewhere to, the low mid 20s and then spike up, somewhere around 50. Okay. Who knows how much of a window we have? That's on the yearly. If we go to the monthly, you take a look here. We're overall in this downtrend. Okay. We had that recent spike. Now, these spikes, you never know which altcoins are going to run during those spikes, whether it's going to be stuff like Chainlink, Solana, dog shit coins, or whatever. But you can see kind of at a bottom here, and maybe it's getting ready to have a reflex back up. Maybe. So what are some of the altcoins doing? Well, let's start with the most popular altcoin. We're on the daily. Look at this. Settling in nicely on the 100-day moving average. So if there's other altcoins that are at or below the 100-day moving average, that might look kind of good. Okay, let's go over to Solana. That's a lot of people's pick to be the biggest altcoin outside of Ethereum this time. Look at that. The 100-day moving average and the 0.5 fib. We can go click the 5-year and go to the weekly. We have this sell signal. It's got us to the 0.5 fib and the 20 moving average. That looks like a pretty strong base as far as I'm concerned. And if it went lower, we have price structure here, and you might be able to get Solana in the lower hundreds. Sure. Going back over to Ethereum, look at that on the weekly. The 0.5 fib, the 20 moving average on the weekly, the daily, 0.5 fib, it wicked to it, but it's right now very nicely on the 100, that light blue line, the 100 moving average. Chainlink, another top pick for an altcoin. Whoa, boy, look at this. It was holding the 100, got under that 0.5 fib, tried to hold on to the 200, and boom, fell off. I'm sure a lot of other altcoins are doing this too. Got below the 0.5 to the 386 or the 382. Yeah, the 382. Yep. So maybe this is an area to start dollar cost averaging in when we're below these moving averages. At least let's go to the weekly. Got down to the 100-week moving average. Here we can start taking a look at the relative strength index. This is one way I take a look at it. Didn't I say I was going to finish this video? I apologize. I just want to show you guys some ways that I try to look for deals. Relative strength index. Look at that strength on the weekly moving down. Okay. Sometimes we only spike once. Other times, the second time we spike is when we go lower. If we go to the daily, daily is oversold. So maybe something like Link, you might be able to get a deal. Okay. IMX, the top gaming altcoin. Look at that. It's at the 618, but it's underneath the 200-day moving average. And it's at the 50-week moving average. So guys, altcoins are hitting some nice areas of support where, if it was a stock that I really liked and loved, that I have money in, I would be like, hey, maybe I dollar cost average in a little. I'm not saying bet the farm on it right now. I'm talking dollar cost average in. If you've done your research and you're like, hey, Ethereum's something I like. Litecoin, Solana, something I like. I'm going to throw a little money on it. Now, for me personally, the RSI, know that it is still bearish. Okay. It may still have lower to go, and that's okay if you're comfortable. And you have to be comfortable this way as an investor. Things might go lower. And if you don't get more excited, I want you to put yourself in this mind frame now. If you tell yourself, and none of what I say is financial advice, by the way, but if you tell yourself, you know what, I've done my research, I really love Ethereum, I think it's the greatest altcoin there is. This is you talking now, maybe. It's on the 100-day moving average. That's a good thing, right? Touch the 0.5. I feel comfortable dollar cost averaging in $100. Some of you, maybe it'll be 1,000, 10,000, whatever. Any profits are good profits. I'm not here to shame anyone who makes 20% or 20x. But you tell yourself, you know what, I'm going to dollar cost average it. If in a month the price then goes down to the 200, if you are not excited, more excited to dollar cost average in more, then you shouldn't be buying this or any crypto, in my opinion. But if you're like, whoa, it is at a lower fib, a lower moving average, I'm seeing some structure. Maybe I put on a buy, sell signal indicator. This is the one I use, the 1020 moving average crossover with Heikin-Ashi signals. More of a front-running signal. Another buy-sell signal indicator you can use is UT bot alerts. More of a confirming indicator. Use those. I like them. I go by those signals when they're on the weekly or monthly personally. But you do you. If you are not, back to my point, if you're not more excited to dollar cost average in more, because maybe it goes down here and you're like, you know what, this is awesome. I'm going to put $200 into it. It's at the 200-day moving average. If that's not your train of thought, I don't think you should be taking the risk. Because again, we're still in high greed. And there's no guarantee. Myself, no one knows where crypto's going. For all we know, we could go into next Great Depression. Who knows? All right? None of us know. But in order to have a plan or to make money, you need to make a plan. Literally write it down, type it out. And once the conditions of your stock or crypto, once the price meets the conditions of your plan, that's when you can attack it and go in. And I'm trying to be excited right now because I want to help some of you guys get excited. I see too many people just lose their shit, excuse my language, as the price goes lower when you should be getting more excited. So myself, I'm taking a look at some of these altcoins and saying, I might dollar cost average in a little on some of these I really like. And should it get lower? That's okay. I like it. I've done my research. I believe in it. I might dollar cost average in more. Should it get lower? I don't care. Because I truly believe it'll go back up into newer all-time highs. That is my theory. There's no guarantees. All crypto might die. Who knows? That is a risk I'm assuming and willing to make and something I believe in. And one way I try to manage that risk is have some patience, buy the fear, buy the lower moving averages when things are oversold. That is how I look at it. Okay? I hope you guys enjoyed this video on all things Bitcoin Rainbow Chart. I know I jumped over to fear and greed, all season, inflation, rate cuts, all that. It's all important. It's all tied together, and they're all factors to look at. You can keep this as simple as you want. You can make this as complicated as you want. Don't make it too complicated because you can really go down a rabbit hole. Again, I highly, highly encourage all of you. I'm going to give you homework. I do this as a consultant too. I give people homework. Your homework is to write down your plan. Maybe you base your plan off of fibs, moving averages, on more of a macro time frame. I want this to be an investor channel more than a trading channel. I'm not looking at short term next, 3 months. Maybe you base it off buy sell signals or some combination, whatever. But at the very least, do your research, and every risk you take is your own. Okay. There are some altcoins that I've bought that, they were in the green a while. Now they're back to where they were. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And I'm excited about that because then that means I get to buy more. And the end of the crypto cycle this time around isn't as close as maybe we thought. I was talking about middle of this year not too long ago because I truly thought the Fed was saying, hey, rate cuts are coming sooner. But you know what? Inflation's not as in control as they thought. So I don't know. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Tomorrow I'm going to be doing my weekly video on the Bitcoin mining stocks. I will also do some videos on altcoins. And if there's any altcoins on Coinbase you want me to take a look at on the charts, comment below. I also do videos on stocks because since Bitcoin is so volatile, and we're lucky enough to get profits and take large profits out of crypto, I want to put it into safer alts or into safer stocks that are less volatile, but that are strong. So that money works for me and then it's less stress for me. Okay. You guys, we all have different risk profiles, do what's best for you, but that's part of my plan. Okay. You don't have to share that. So I do videos on stocks too, especially the Mag 7 and stocks that have earnings reports this week. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all are doing well. Take care. Have a great day.